Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in today. This is Victoria D. Walker, and I'm so very grateful you're here. Did you know that you can join the new public Choose to Think podcast community group on Facebook? Yeah, I hope you will. Please just visit the page, start with a grateful heart, it has my name, and then click join group. I would love to have you there to continue our discussion on the various episode topics and just to get to know you. Also, I'd love to stay connected with you a bit more personally. Please opt in at my website, victoriadwalker.com. Okay, now let's get on with the show. Today we talk international adoption. Perhaps you represent one of the 60% of Americans who have some tie-in to adoption. Perhaps you were adopted, or maybe your family chose to adopt and or foster to adopt domestically or internationally. In light of November being proclaimed Adoption Awareness Month, our guest today is Christine Gibson. Her family adopted from Korea, which happens to be number 5 on the foreign countries adoption list. I had so much fun chatting with Christine, and I just know you will love her sweet spirit and wit. Not only is she a remarkably kind and down-to-earth individual, she has also penned 2 books. The first was Saints on Call, Everyday Devotions for Moms, and Stay Mr. and Mrs. After You're Married. And she co-authored that one with her husband, David. Now, make sure you stay tuned till the very end to listen to the unfolding of a modern day miracle. And let me tell you that the Choose to Think on the Light Side themed merch for this episode is the tagline, One Happy Baby. All the links are going to be in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's go. Welcome, Christine Gibson, to the Choose to Think podcast.
Thank you, Victoria. Delighted to be here with you.
I am so excited to have this opportunity to chat with you. And just so the listeners will know, I met Christine, I don't even know what year that was maybe 2008, I'm thinking. And we were colleagues at Midway College. And she is one of the most delightful people you could ever hope to meet in your life.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, let's just tell it like it is,
Oh,
okay?
my.
We're just gonna say it like it is. And, I had the privilege of sharing office area with her. Her office was right across the hall from mine, and she always came with such a smile on her face, an encouraging word, and just kind-hearted individual. And I mean, her whole family. And she has such a unique and interesting story to share with us today about adoption and being a mom and just that road that she and her husband, David, took as they, from way back when they started their family to pulling us all the way up to today. So I can't wait to hear this story and share this with listeners because it's so encouraging and exciting. So Christine, let's just start from the very beginning. You and David get married, and then at some point you're like, we're going to start our family. And so tell us what all of that was like for you, if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, what an intro. I mean, gosh, Victoria, you're so kind. Usually people have to be dead to have things like that said about them. So this is a real treat. Thank you. You're so sweet. So yeah, we were married for quite a while before we had kids, but one thing we agreed on was at some point we wanted to adopt children. I just kind of assumed that would be after we had biological kids because my doctor was like, you want to have kids when you're young, that's like the odds are just in your favor. So that's what I just kind of figured we'd do. But then I just never got pregnant. And there wasn't really any reason why that anybody could tell. So we should have been fine, but we weren't. So we weren't making any babies. And I said, well, okay, then I guess we're just going to adopt first then and then see what happens. I didn't really feel like called to do any high-tech ways of getting pregnant. I just felt like, okay, God, we'll just adopt first then. And so that was just a yes. So we went to talk, gosh. And anybody who's been down this road knows you talk to a lot of people. We talked to foster care people. We talked to um, different social workers. We talked to people who had adopted, who were waiting to adopt. And um, then at that time, I felt very moved, as I know a lot of people did, about the plight of little girls in China. And the story at the time was that they had a one-child policy, which seemed so cruel and anti-life, and I just felt so strongly for those little babies who, we were told would not be allowed to stay there in China with their biological families. So there were all these baby girls to adopt from China, and that just really kind of tugged at my heart and David's, and so we signed up and we were all in. And everybody, we knew people who had adopted from China, and we even went. Now that I'm thinking about it, we even went to these, like, there's a, I think it was called Families with Children from China or something, a group in Lexington. So while we were waiting, we had our paperwork in and we were just waiting. We like went to like an event with them. They had everybody was so nice. They're like, "Where's your child? We don't have one. We're just waiting." They were so sweet. It was like Chinese New Year or something. So they were very sweet about it. And so we were just sure, I felt like, oh yeah, God just put this on our hearts, and that's just how it's going to be. But then, like, nothing happened. We were waiting and waiting. And I felt like I was getting older every minute, and I'm
Mhm.
like, gosh, how long is this going to take? And then all the news was getting more and more grim. Like, oh, it's taking longer. Instead of a year, maybe it'll take 2 years. Oh, maybe it'll take 3 years. And nobody really had answers because, you're dealing with a country that wasn't sharing much. So we were just I remember crying. I remember it being like Mother's Day, and at church, they always recognize the moms. And I
Yes.
remember just sitting there crying. And I remember a sweet lady, she like gave me, I don't know what they gave out. It wasn't anything big. It was like a rose or something. She gave me her rose, like I really wanted the rose, but that was so sweet of her. But so anyways, it was a long time. And I remember that being really hard and thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? I was really sure this is what we were supposed to do. And here I sit, like I said, getting older every second. So, and I know a lot of people have been there. So, yeah, so I was getting so frustrated and down. And then when you like really discern for a long time and prayerfully decide what to do and it doesn't work out, I guess that can be in any number of parts of life. That's hard. So, David is a math person. And so he's looking at how, like, kind of extrapolating out how long this could end up taking and how old we would be before this adoption was ever finalized. And we were just driving one night to this little event we would go to like once a week in the summer. It was called Theology on Tap. It was for young people. That was when we were young. And you'd go to like a neighborhood bar and there would be a speaker about something or other faith related. And so we saw some friends there who were, so we're driving there and David says, this China thing isn't going to happen. We're not going to adopt from China. It's just not going to happen. We're just getting too old and this timeline, it's just not going to work. We need a new plan. And so I'm like, oh my heavens. It was almost like blasphemy. Like, how could he say that? This was the plan. God like spoke it into my ear. I'm sure this is what we're supposed to do. And I don't have another plan. I can't start over. I feel like maybe this line's going to speed up and I'm going to have a baby. But like I said, he's very logical. And so I was pretty miffed. And then we go into this bar and our friends are there. And they had been dealing with infertility and thinking about adoption. And so we sat down and this girl says, we're going to adopt from Korea. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting, but I don't think you can adopt from Korea anymore. We knew two little girls who'd been adopted from Korea and they were like in their 20s. I said, well, that's, who does that? And she said, yeah, I know not many people do. Everybody thinks you can adopt from China, but not Korea. But yeah, there's this agency. It was about like half an hour away and she deals with Korea. And I was like, huh. And so of course my friend had done all this research and she's like, yeah, it only takes like 9 months and the babies are in foster care. And yeah, if you feel like, you're still called to adoption and looking for another idea, this is really an idea. So I was like, Well, by the next day, we were on the road to that adoption coordinator. 'Cause we thought, "Well, okay, all right, David already said we are not waiting in this line for the rest of our lives." And then there came this answer, you know. So, we went down there and it was just she went through all the different countries that people adopted from, and when she told us about Korea, we were like, "Sign us up, that's it, we wanna do that right now." And she said, "Okay, I'll send you some paperwork, we'll get you started." And, then I thought, "Oh my gosh," afterward, I thought, "We didn't pray about this, we didn't do anything, we didn't discern, we jumped in the car and we said yes." So I'm like, "I don't even know if this is the right thing. And am I abandoning this little baby girl in China?" So, there's all those questions in your head. Am I talking too much, Victoria?
No, I'm just taking notes on my side, and one thing I wanna just for the reference here,
Yeah.
what was the year when you started when you and David decided, "Okay, we're gonna adopt," go through that process, and you signed up for the Chinese
Mm.
adoption?
Okay,
Do
I'm
you know the
thinking that
year?
was maybe 2006.
So 2006, and now
Let's
with
see,
the Korean agency, we are what year?
2009.
Okay, so you all had been in this 3-year process, and we
Maybe
you
2, maybe 2, but it felt like 20, I don't know. It
yes,
was a
that
while.
was gonna be my point
Yeah,
because it's easy for us to talk about right now
exactly.
and condense all of that, but the day-to-day
Mhm,
grind, that yearning for a child, praying for a child, the frustrations. You're
mhm,
not the first person I've ever heard say something about Mother's Day at
mhm,
church or just the holiday itself and the sadness that can wash over a heart, a mother's heart,
mhm,
a woman's heart who longs to have a child. And so it's easy for us to like fast forward
yeah,
those 2 to 3 years and
mhm,
to the point where now you've suddenly hope has entered the scene again in a new and fresh way. And I know what you mean about praying. Sometimes the Lord drops something in my path or some opportunity and it's like it's such a good fit. The shoe
mhm,
fits,
yeah,
and I put it on and I run with it
mhm,
because and then, I may think, "Oh, Lord, I did that and I didn't even consult you on this." But,
mhm,
when we walk and we're in tune with the Lord, we also trust him to say, "Mm-mm, nope, halt on that." So, and we can just get excited about the decision. Some decisions I think are just easier than others, and
mhm,
we just we know it. Not it's not really, I wouldn't even say it's impulsive. It is just a confirmation or something happens and our spirit is kindled and we, kind of go for it. Doesn't mean we can't second guess it after the fact, but I mean, I want to make sure that I know there are listeners who have gone through the adoption process or who have women who maybe even now are longing for children. And the point is that it is hard. It's a
mhm,
difficult road to walk.
mhm,
And it sometimes when we're in that fog or that constant, okay, Lord, it's just got to be your will, your timing, your way. That's easy to say, but hard to do sometimes. So,
mhm.
okay, so here we are, maybe 2 to 3 years later with the now new a fresh idea, fresh hope, and so we're pivoting now to Korea. So yeah, keep on going, you're
Yeah.
doing great.
Victoria, I appreciate you adding all that because it's so true. I didn't really get into that, the anguish of it all. Like, there were babies everywhere. And I think every woman dealing with this is like every corner you turn, there's a baby and they're all
Yeah,
beautiful and somebody else has them. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
And I was part of a church, or my friend created a group through the church, for women dealing with infertility. And I mean, I always felt like I wasn't as anguished as they were, although I certainly was. Um, I did, it was hard, but some of them had, they may have had husbands who weren't open to adoption or, for whatever reason they weren't. And I didn't understand that, but it made everything so much harder for them. And
Mm.
that was kinda heartbreaking to say, I don't know if they ever became moms. So, anyways, that yeah, it's just a really, really hard time, and as you said, we all say, "Oh, yeah, thy will be done," it's part of a prayer. We all say it, but it's, as everybody knows, sometimes it's hard to just surrender that
Right,
and
because it
trust.
strikes at the very core of, in this case, of our womanhood,
Mhm,
of, who we are, and that longing that we have to have that family unit.
mhm,
And I think there's a scripture I can't think of it off the top of my head, but God places the lonely in families, or it's something like that. And that's even for the listener who never did have a biological child, or never did have, the opportunity to adopt, or the desire to adopt. God still has a way of taking all of us and putting us into a family. And I know, I have family, friends who they quote adopt their nieces and nephews, and they're very involved in their lives,
mhm,
and maybe they've settled that out with God in their own hearts. I'm not sure, but I know that feeling, with 4 children myself, that was such having children is just such a blessing. And the whole infertility thing, I think, I don't know what that's like personally, obviously, but I do wonder, um, that would also take my mind in a different direction, like, why can't I conceive, or what is wrong in this situation? Or, I think that would be extremely difficult to walk through as well.
mhm. Yeah, and now this is a it is, right? But I remember, this is a little moment of levity for us, Victoria. I was at this group, and this sweet woman, I mean, she was such a beautiful girl, and, she said she had cried to her husband, "If you had married someone else, you could have been a dad by now." And I
Mm.
remember, like, thinking, "Oh my goodness, like, what a and I guess I was so selfish. I said, "I never thought that." Like, I always thought my husband was very lucky to have me no matter if I could have children or not. Maybe I'm
Indeed he
egotistical,
is.
but wow, I mean, it really, like, affected her identity as a wife as well. Like, I'm not able to do this for you.
Wow.
Yeah, I never thought about that. She had,
Yeah.
bless her heart.
Yeah, that would be all the things that come to our minds when we're struggling with that and grappling with that issue. It's just the desire of our heart, and reckoning that with God's will and his ways. And sometimes there's a disconnect in that. And I learned in a totally different example that, I had a desire in my heart that was so godly, just like bearing children, and having that family unit and so forth. And it never came to pass. And that I had to relinquish that at some point, because I couldn't understand why God wasn't just doing what I was asking him to do. And I mean,
Because it was something
I can hear
good.
it now. Yeah, it was something good and godly and proper and right, but it's just not that simple. So instead, I had to learn, and it took me a long time to say, okay, I'm gonna go with you on this, God, and trust you on this, God. But it's hard. It's just very, very difficult.
Mhm. It really
Okay, so
tests you. It does.
yes, so let's go to Korea now.
Let's go to
So
Korea.
yeah, fill us in now.
Let's go. Oh, so it was like you said, and the way you just put it, it was a fresh hope. And so I wish I had talked to you at that time. I wish I had known you then, because I think emotionally, psychologically, it was totally understandable that somebody proposes something that is really the answer to all your problems and wishes and desires and prayers and everything. Who's not going to jump in? So we
Yeah,
did. We jumped in.
yeah.
And we were so excited. And they're like, it is going to be 9 months from now. Now, here's a funny thing. We have the letter that the social worker, the adoption coordinator, sent us that was kind of recapped our meeting and told us what to do next. She sent it, got it a couple days later. And if we weren't there on the day, if we had not met with her on the day Drew was born, it was maybe a day after. And, I didn't know it then, but he was either being born that day or the next day or the day before, somewhere right there. We were there on the day he was born. And
That's
isn't that
amazing.
wild? And she
That is
said, "This is
wild.
about 9 months." And so we did this mountain of paperwork, and you've got to be checked out every which way. They want to know about your marriage and about your weight and your job, and you take pictures of yourself and send them, and you have to try and we thought, okay, how do we impress these people who are going to match us with a baby? So I'm like, oh goodness, take good pictures of me and my good side, and how do I dress? So everything. And I thought maybe they like if I'll play a musical instrument. I sent a picture of myself at a piano and holding a
Oh.
book. I want to look smart.
Oh, yeah, bless your heart. I mean, isn't it funny what we would do to be impressive? And I mean, you wanted to make sure everything was just polished and tied up nicely, and that's so sweet.
Oh, honey, you'll do anything. If they said, learn to do backflip, I'd be like, watch this backflip. I got it. So anyway, you do all this and you send it off, and then you just wait. And so I waited, and I had a little group. It was so sweet. We met once a week, a little prayer group um, through church. And I remember telling them, everybody prays for a healthy baby, but I've got this crazy prayer in my mind, and I don't even know why or where it came from. And I'm so silly. I just keep praying for a happy baby. And I don't know I mean, did I ever know like an unhappy baby? I don't know. I don't know if, like, in my head, I know, like, a baby who was really fussy maybe? I don't know. But my friends were like, "Well, that's no big deal. Pray for a happy baby if that's what you wanna pray for." And so I thought, "Well, okay." And I would pray, "God, just give me a sign that we're doing the right thing," I feel like I've abandoned this other idea that we discerned about and we really knew that was what you wanted us to do, and we just kinda jumped in headlong on this new idea. So just I've kind of made plans, and then I'm asking God to bless them afterward. But now, kind of like after what you said, of course God understands that. Who wouldn't? That's how He made us to want to do what seems like it's going to make all of our desires come true in a good way. So, anyways,
Right, I mean, it just seems like a big, huge open door,
it was. It
so
was.
come on now, walk through it.
Yeah.
I'm doing something for you, and yeah, did you feel like the whole happy versus or healthy versus happy baby, did you kind of how did you feel with the whole happy tag there? In other words, did you feel like, "This is so weird," or, "I feel guilty,
Mhm.
I should just want healthy, and why am I wanting happy?"
Totally.
Or
Yeah. And so then I talked to my friends on our Tuesday night group, and they're like, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with praying for a happy baby. And so then I talked to my sister, and she said, yeah, pray for what you want, pray for everything, whatever. God will sort it out. And I thought, well, okay, just wouldn't leave my mind. So I'm like, well, two different, trusted people have told me, go ahead and pray for a happy baby. And of course, I want the baby to be healthy and all that. But yeah, so I just kept on with my happy baby prayer. And I wrote it in a journal. And I was like, oh, isn't this funny? But I just can't stop thinking about having a happy baby. So I got a call. I was at Midway College, Victoria, in a different office, in a basement office on February 2nd. And I thought, see, I am not great with details. And there are like 8,000 details and I's to dot and T's to cross, like in this process. And I saw on my phone, my office phone, I knew that number was a social worker. And I thought, great, I have messed something up. She's going to tell us, go back to the back of the line.
Mm.
Your paperwork is imperfect. So, okay, here I go. Hello.
It probably was that picture at the piano or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You don't look like a pianist.
That's right.
You're a fraud.
That's
So
right.
you really are such a bundle of nerves. So it was kind of evening, and I picked up the phone, and she said, "I have your referral." And I mean, it was like a bowling ball hit me. I just like sat down, and she said, "It's a boy, and he's a cute little fella, and he was born July 30th." And oh my gosh, like I'm crying right now.
Mm.
There is nothing in the world like that moment.
Aw.
And David wasn't there. David and I worked together, and he had the office next door to mine, but he was gone. So I just like wandered out into the hall like someone who'd just been like, you know, like shell shocked. And I just saw the first person, Lois. Do you know Lois, Victoria?
What's her last name?
Oh, Lois Webb. She
Gosh,
works
I
down
know
there in the
that name.
basement.
What did was she teacher? Professor?
She was a secretary for the online division when they were in the basement. I just wandered out looking for
Found
someone.
her?
And I said, "Lois, it's a boy." And she had adopted a son herself when she was,
Aw.
yeah, so her first child was a boy she had adopted. And oh my gosh, I just remember that moment and then like driving home like in a daze. And yeah, so that was like a whole thing. And then we went and got pictures of him the next day. And oh my goodness gracious. And then to know that he's like on the other side of the world and they don't let you go right away. For some reason, there's like another step. So he was my baby was like 5 months old at that time, but then you have to wait. I don't know what we're waiting for, but there's a process. And so that was February. And then it wasn't until May when when I got the call that said, okay, you can come. You can come get him.
Wow.
Yeah. So you have these months of just staring at pictures.
And before we go on, let's take a quick break from our sponsor.
So yeah, he was just this little fat, pumpkin of a little man in these pictures with his little 6-month legs, and we just
Yeah.
study him and look how big his head is. He's got a big brain in there and, you know, oh, he can sit up or whatever. So we just studied that. And then they sent more pictures in April. And oh gosh, look how big he's gotten. And then they tell you, they give you information about his history and everything that ever happened to him. And he was with a foster mother. And so, anyways, time goes while you're staring at pictures and getting a baby's room ready and buying everything. And oh gosh, we had so many baby showers. Oh heavens. Yes, we were unusual, I guess. And people felt bad for us. We were so old. I think we had 4
Wait,
baby
wait, wait, wait.
showers.
How old were you?
I felt like I was old. I really wasn't. I was
Yeah, I know, it's all perspective. How old were you, though? If
I
you
was
don't mind
35. I
sharing.
was 35, right? Yeah, I was 35.
Okay.
Yeah, but, we wanted more, so how old was I gonna be? I was gonna be 60.
Right. Gotcha.
So, all the while, I'm like, "Okay, God, yeah, this is still our plan, and I just really need to know it's your plan too." And so I'm still praying for my happy baby. And so then we fly to Korea, and, oh gosh, we have 0 both of us are the youngest children in our family. We have no idea about anything about babies, so we were nervous wrecks. Oh, and they put you up in this little guest house, just it's kind of fascinating, just for adoptive parents, coming to get their babies. From all over the world, people come. And we were going to meet him on this is a funny rule too. So you meet the baby. We met the baby on Friday, and we were going to have to then spend the weekend there and then not actually have him as ours to have forever until Monday. So I don't and then once you get the baby, you have to leave the next day, or that was the rule then. So you take a baby anyway. So there was a process. And so I
Very orchestrated. It sounds
Oh
very
gosh,
orchestrated.
yes. I don't know why they didn't, because I thought it would be nice to hang out there for about a week, get him used to us and, still hear the sounds and
Sure.
smells and everything of his home.
Yeah, but they're like, "Nope,
Nope.
you got your bye,
Get
see you
out.
later.
Yeah.
Adios."
Get on the
Yep.
plane for 24 hours. You're traveling for 24 hours. So
Wow.
it is crazy. But anyway, so, we are nervous as you can be. And I'm like, oh God, I'm still not really positive that this is even your plan, God. It was certainly our plan. And I'm just praying for this happy baby. If you could just give us some kind of sign, that would be so awesome. I don't
Mhm.
know why, but I was really hung up on this. There were 18 open doors and everything went well, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just a worrier, or I really wanted to do it right. I guess that's it. Some things, whatever, but I really wanted this to be clearly God's plan. And so that Friday, it was the first Friday in May, and the social worker met us. And this is kind of a funny thing, Victoria. I don't know if I ever told you. When we went to it was called Social Welfare Society. When we went there and met our social worker, she said, "Did you see?" His name was Hyun, and we kept that as his middle name.
How
Did
do you
you?
spell that?
It's like the first half of Hyundai, Hyun.
Hyun.
Mhm.
Okay.
You little
Go ahead.
Hyun. And did you see Hyun's picture? And I thought, well, there's a translation problem here because she sent me, dozens of pictures. And she said, in the elevator. And then she took us back to the elevator, and there was this big poster. And she said, these are billboards around Korea. This is Hyun. This is your baby with this movie star. So he had
Wow.
quite a wild time before we got him. He was a little celebrity. Celebrities in Korea were doing an ad campaign to promote adoption because Koreans traditionally are not it's just not an adoption culture. And it's just, I think they're very into their family lineage, and most Koreans can tell you like their ancestry 20 generations back. No
Wow.
exaggeration. This is their bloodline is very important. And it's not to us specifically and us generally as Americans. We're just not into that. So, anyways, trying to help these babies get homes in Korea was their goal, and they had this little ad campaign. So, Drew, we have it framed in our hallway here, is in the arms of this major movie star in Korea, trying to show the public how precious these little babies were who needed homes. So, anyways, that
Wow.
that was
Yeah,
kind of funny.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Now I'm assuming you hadn't heard of that star
No.
before. Yeah, but he would
No.
be yeah, that's amazing. Have you kept up with him by chance or no?
No, but this year I had Drew stand because they made a little booklet, for people to look at and learn about this. And he had written about the photo shoot. He said, "Oh, little Hyun, I worry about you because you're so small." And Drew was very premature. He was like 4 pounds when he was born,
Mm.
and he was a newborn in this picture. And I said, Drew, let's take a picture of you by this poster and send it to him and let him know you're fine. You grew up big and strong. But we can't figure out how to get it to him. So that's a little project I need to work on because I think that would be really fun.
Oh, you've gotta do that,
Totally,
totally.
right?
You've got to do that. That
And
is so awesome.
Drew has very classic Korean features. And, when you have a little tiny baby in your hands, you don't know how he's going to grow up to be so big and just, yeah, he's,
Oh, I've watched
he's
him grow. I have watched him grow, and it's astounding to me. He's even now, he's just developing all the manly look as he's coming through this. So he's a handsome young man. He really is.
thank you. Every Korean lady I have ever known stops and like tells me like it's inside information. She's like, he is handsome. So I think that he has the Korean handsome seal of approval.
I think so, definitely.
So I think that's good to know. So anyways, so we had that, and then we jump in the car, and there's a driver who takes us through all these narrow streets. And we were just like so excited. And we take our shoes off when we get to this little apartment, and there he is. And it's clear that this foster mother is so in love with him. She is so devoted to him. And they have this very tidy little apartment, and everything is baby, so it's all about him.
Mm,
And there he is at one of those machines, that babies stand up and they can like lean on and press to make sounds and things.
yes.
I always called it like his DJ machine. And he was there, and oh, he was so chubby and so half bald and just looking up, and they had our pictures, David's picture, my picture, on this little, like in this little cabinet where he could see us, which I thought was so sweet of them.
Mm.
And I was like, it just takes your breath away seeing this little baby, and I'm a bundle of nerves, and I go over and I pick him up, and you just kind of tentatively, and then he seemed pretty happy, so I lifted him way up, and he liked that. And then I just was staring, right at my eye level were the words "happy baby" written in English on his little denim overalls in orange stitches. It said "happy baby." And I remember like letting out a sound. They almost have thought, oh my gosh, we got the crazy mom. Because it wasn't like a word that came out of me. It was just like, like, I don't know, something from the depths of my soul. Because it was like, here's my answer right in my hands right here. And a prayer that had been insisting on being prayed for months, just so I would know this was my baby. And there he was, happy baby in English that he happened to be wearing that day that I met him.
That is a miracle.
It
I think
is.
there's no other word for it but a miracle. And I think of our Heavenly Father who, he knew this all along, and he drew together in his mother's womb, and he knew that you and David would be there on that day to take this young child and to love him and grow him up according to God's plan. And it's just astounding that our Father in heaven was so tender and sweet and kind and loving to you at that moment, despite the years of anguish and turmoil and waiting and praying and doubting and wondering. And finally to have that, those two words to
That's it.
serve as this: Christine, I know you are there. I know your heart. I love you and I care for you. And this is the day to show you that. And
Mm.
it's just, when you told me that the first time, I, it's an amazing story of God's love and grace and tenderness for you, for Drew, for David, for your family. And it's a wonderful testimony to the listener that God hears our cries, He hears our prayers, He does not leave or forsake us, and He has something in mind, a path for us that may not look like the one that we would have chosen or that we would even enjoy or like, because it may be filled with obstacles and roadblocks and 1,000 different ways we can meander around. But God doesn't forget about us. And I couldn't thank you enough for sharing this story. It's just I couldn't wait to get to this point. As a matter of fact,
Aw.
I knew what was coming
Well,
with
Victoria, your reflection on it just now is just so spot on. It's so exactly what I've always felt, but I don't think I've ever articulated as well as you just did. But I know that it is what I think of whenever I'm doubtful or worried. I think, well, look how God took care of us, and look how He comforted and assured, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I always that's my story for the rest of my life. When I'm an old
yeah.
lady struggling, that's what I'll think of. That's the moment I go to.
Yes, it has to be. That is such an altar of faith in your life, a mile marker along the way. And, I did a study once, and this is just coming to me now, but on how many times God in His Word says, remember, remember,
Mm.
remember. And it was a gazillion remembers on His faithfulness, basically, things He had done. And He wants His children to remember those things because they do build our faith. And when we get in that moment of the storm is raging and we feel a little bit doubtful or tentative, and we can just say, wait a minute, I'm going to remember this, because that moment in time, it's it's not coincidental. How can that
No.
happen?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is
it wasn't.
supernatural. It exceeds and transcends that which is even natural. I don't know how we could say that's coincidental by any stretch, no matter what I may believe. It's just a sweet message and a love letter directly to you. You know what? You were also a happy baby, right? You were God, as God's child, His daughter. You
Yes.
were also happy. And now I'm happy. Everybody.
Everybody's happy. It's everybody's story. Let's say that. It is everybody's story.
Yeah,
You can rejoice and remember someone else's, moments with God, and I think it can encourage you as well, how people got to.
absolutely. Okay, so now tell us about your family. Now pull us
Oh.
all the way up to what's going on now in your life. How are things looking now?
Aw, you're so sweet. Well, I got 2 kids now.
That's right. That's what I want you to talk about.
Oh, so yeah, we were going to go back to Korea because, it was such a wonderful process, and, it made sense. And so they said, now that you've adopted once, you can request a gender. They may not honor that request, but you could say. And we thought, well, we'll just go try and get a little Korean girl. And so I had a little pink file folder ready to go, and we, I think we had a couple more pieces of paper to put in that file and send off, and I just was not feeling good, and of course, I'm pregnant, and Drew was 2 at that time, and you know what I said? And any mom who I think most moms, when once you have 1 child and then you find out you're going to have another, you think, "Well, how could I possibly do this to that child?" Did you think that, Victoria? Like,
Um,
he's the very center of everything. How could this
I
how could this happen?
Well, I'll tell you about my experience with my second boy. Believe it or not, I was still nursing Elaine, and I went to the doctor. Thank you for letting me share this because
Yeah,
I
I
love
wanna
to
hear
tell
it.
this story. And I it was at a time Elaine was born in 1990, but this was at a time when do you remember when chronic fatigue syndrome came
Yes.
out?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You
So,
thought you
Elaine
had it.
Elaine was 6 months old. I was nursing her. I was losing weight like crazy, more than you're supposed to. Of course, I was so tired, but everyone kept saying, "You know, honey, this is your first baby. This is your first baby. No worries, it's your first baby." And everybody's tired, and you're
Mhm.
not sleeping at night, and all of that. And I'm like, I need medical counsel on this. I am just this is something's not right. And
Yeah.
so I go, and I'm sorry, she was. Let me see. Let me get this. She was 9 months old.
Oh.
She was 9 months old. But when I went, the doctor said, "You are pregnant, and you are through your first trimester."
Oh! Oh,
So yeah.
mercy.
So for 3 months, I had been I'd been trying to nurse a baby,
Nurse.
grow a baby, and then
Yeah.
sustain myself. So
Oh
I
my
did
gosh, no wonder
not
you were
have
tired.
I did not have chronic fatigue syndrome, thank goodness.
You
I
did.
had a baby is what I had.
Oh, you were chronically fatigued, but it was no
Yes.
syndrome.
Yes, and so I don't think I even had time to think about that, but I do know that
Mhm.
feeling because especially what happened to me when William came into the world, suddenly Elaine, who was my tiny little baby all that time, and she was just a toddler, she was only 15 months old when Will was born, and she seemed like a giant suddenly.
Yeah.
And do you remember the size, how the size your eyes shifted on you've got this little baby, little teeny fingers, and then your toddler's hand or your 2-year-old's hand next to that, and you're like, "Man, that kid is
That's
huge."
a big kid,
And
yeah.
yeah, compared, and so I do remember some sadness because the Elaine lost her babyhood or that
Yes,
little spot, that
yes.
she had and then, but life goes on and, you're changing diapers and trying to get dinner on the table. So
That's
you
it,
you
yeah,
kind of forget about that. But I do know what you're talking
yeah.
about. Yeah.
So, yeah, that was then there she came on the scene, and, my mom always said he was the best thing for her, and she's the best thing for him, and it all worked out, as it always does. So, anyways, and then years later, we stayed in the Chinese adoption line for years, and then, they call, we had a conversation, and I said, "Well, we've had 2 children now," and they said, "Yeah, you would still be waiting." So I said, I think we're good." So they said, "We understand," and that was just the plan all along, and all I have to do is think about my little happy baby, and I know it was all God's plan, and I don't have to wonder.
Amen. I have one more question that just occurred to me before we close. How have you handled the the issue, I guess we could say, of Drew being Korean
Mhm.
and your family American? Have you ever experienced any sort of has there been any kind of racial tension there, or how have you approached that even with both your children or and this is a huge question. We
Yeah.
could probably spend like 2 hours on it, but kind of in a nutshell, how have you reasoned through all of that?
I don't know, except that it was another kind of a God thing that people, like, various people through time, through those first few years, would say things like, "Make sure he's around other Asians." And I remember, like, a chiropractor telling me that my chiropractor was adopted from Korea, and he was like, "Make sure he goes. What school is he going to? Oh, good. There's a lot of Asians there." So that was something that was in our mind. So we actually like did research on that. Like, okay, is this like something important? People were telling us this clearly. And we kind of listened. And so then we researched and said, okay, well, what elementary school has the most Asian kids? So you feel good about how you look and you fit in and you don't feel unusual because, you might anyways in our family or, people who you might feel like you stand out. So anyways, we did that. We got that down. And then he's brought it up before. And, but we talk about a lot about, he knows the story, he knows the happy baby story. He knows that, sometimes people have babies they aren't ready to take care of or can't for whatever reason. And adoption has happened for thousands of years, little baby Moses. So adoption is a great way for people to create a family. And I remember we were talking about self-esteem. This was some months ago. And I feel like something must have worked out all right because I said, well, what are you proud of? And, he's proud of trophies and things. And then he said, I'm proud of being Korean. And I thought, okay, something worked out right then.
Mm,
That, yeah, I guess we've always tried to celebrate that. And he feels special because of it.
that's
Yeah.
wonderful. That is really wonderful. And, truly we're all, quote, adopted in
Yes,
and grafted in to God's family as well. There's an adoption process
there
there too.
is.
Yeah, that always gives me some, I'm not Jewish, obviously,
Mm.
but we're that Judeo-Christian whole big ball of wax there where we are grafted in and adopted in as children of God. And that's a amazing
Yeah.
story in and of itself. Well, Christine, I want to highlight very quickly your two books. Christine is a published author. You just need
You're
to know
so
that
sweet.
also. And she has two books. Her first one out in 2011 is called Saints on Call, Everyday Devotions. Is that the total title of it? Saints
Everyday
on Call,
devotions for
Everyday
moms.
Devotions?
Hmm.
For moms, for
Hmm.
moms. And then maybe the next year or so, she and her husband David together wrote Stay Mr. and Mrs. After Your Mom and Dad. And now that's not a devotional though, correct?
It's not. It's a Christian-based little how-to on keeping your marriage together because the research just showed that it's not easy caring for little ones. So it kind of takes its toll on relationships. So for whatever that's worth, it's just some little pointers there on keeping your marriage together while you're losing your mind raising kids.
Nice way to put it. Yeah, and I will put the links to both those books on the in the show notes here. So, Christine, you are just amazing and
You're
just so real. And my mom is a faithful listener to the podcast,
Oh, hi,
right?
Mom.
And she gives me such good, feedback. And I already know that she will be calling me saying, oh, I love Christine. She's
Oh,
just so
gosh.
awesome and real. And, I can feel it already. So it's
Well,
going to
you're
be
awfully
coming. But
kind.
we appreciate this. And I hope that women and men, listeners, are encouraged by your story that is so filled, just full of faith and a real life example of how God still works in our lives, in
Mhm.
the lives of 21st century Christians. He does manifest himself and show himself to us in miraculous ways. So thank you so much
Oh,
for
goodness.
appearing on the podcast
I
today.
am so grateful to share that story with everybody who will listen. And Victoria, your mom must be one heck of a lady because she raised a heck of an awesome person here.
Ah,
So thank
well,
you for all the kind words.
you're
And
quite
God
welcome.
bless you in your work. You're doing great things here. This is beautiful.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun. It is just, I'm having a blast. Truly. I'm just like, could it get more fun than this? I mean, I get to talk with such incredible people and find out their stories because stories are so encouraging and inspiring. And I think that we really can use a lot of encouragement and
Mhm.
inspiration these days.
Yes, yes.
So Yeah, so what you're putting into the world today by your story is light and laughter and hope and faith and so many good things. And I'm privileged to be able to be a little component in all of that. So
Well, you're
so
the
anyway,
only.
all right, we could just spend the next hour, maybe, I don't know, complimenting each
Let's do
other.
it.
Okay, all
Thank
right.
you, Victoria.
You bet. Well, Brain Changer, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And before we pray, be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you listen. If you could rate and write a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be incredibly awesome. And if you learned something today or were inspired or encouraged by the message, would you please share this link with a friend? All right, let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the reminder today from James that pure and undefiled religion in your sight is to take care of orphans and widows in their distress and to keep ourselves unstained by the world. May it be so. In Jesus' name, amen. And until next time, Dios primero y que Dios te bendiga. Ciao.